Good old Kroq is an armor-piercing anti-large lord, of course, for the Lizardmen here on his Horned One today. Logic's going to be taking him against the Dwarfs, and as Turin talked about recently, anti-large AP in a specific instance is quite useful, given that, Thorgrim and Thorek both are large targets when mounted up on their things. Thorek in particular is going to be the meta pick almost always for the Dwarfs, so it makes sense to at least have a little bit of armor-piercing anti-large to try and take him out. He is quite tanky as well, with 50 melee defense, physical and missile resistance, plus spell resistance. You know, lots of buffs and things, so definitely is quite tough to kill. Kroq is going to be trying to do his best on that Horned One. For the rest of Logic's build here, he's got a line of 5 Saurus Warriors, a whole bunch of Red Crests, also out of the flanks, 5 of them, and some Feral Cold Ones. So a huge wide build to try and develop this Dwarven defensive position. Got some cannons here defending, looks like 4 Thunderers and 5 Dwarf Warriors with some Miners around the flanks and some Slayers. Or Thorek leading the way, as mentioned. This is actually Everchicken, who's a patron of mine as well. Yeah, Logic, of course, has his own YouTube channel. Don't know how active he has been recently. I haven't been keeping up with his videos, to be honest, but definitely go check him out. At the very least, you can watch some of his old content for me. But anyway, yeah, we can see immediately that these chameleons also, who had been deployed out in the corner, move in and start to whittle away at the Slayers. However, the Thunderers are going to return fire here. The Red Crests also getting blasted on the approach by those Thunderers. The Dowie gun line's absolutely punishing these poor lizards. The Red Crests are not even going to make full contact there, but there's lots and lots of stuff here to fight. Kroq making his way up and around this side flank here, looking to potentially maybe get a side shot of that Hand of the Gods through a unit, especially those Thunderers. Saurus are going to get into combat here, and their decent stats, overall high weapon strength, versus the Dwarfs' decent armor. It's definitely going to be an interesting one. They should win out over Dwarf Warriors over time, but it will probably take them quite some time to do so. So let's kind of watch to see how that goes. Of course, Thorek has the ability to buff up this front line significantly, but it doesn't look like he's engaged Rune of Doom so far. He does not have Rune of Speed either for the melee attack buff, which personally I'm a big fan of, but see the Red Crest now starting to move in on the flanks. Lord of Beasts, Skink, Priest, summoned up a Manticore to come disrupt this position as well, and the Feral Cold One's also looking for an angle, so the Lizardman Logic here definitely trying his best to disrupt and compromise this position. They do manage to contact these Feral Cold Ones. Those Miners, before they get most of their charges off, manage to send a lot of the unit flying and then engage them in melee. So pretty good stuff so far. Chameleon Skinks are also eating some gunfire, which is fine. I mean, their missile resistance will help them kind of tank out that damage to a degree. Manticore also drops down to try and disrupt the cannon. So it's definitely going to be a big grind fight for the time being, as Lizards have executed their full surround, but are still struggling to get through and get on those missile units. Does look like one Feral Cold One managed to break through and get on some Thunderers here, intercepted by the Slayers, but at the very least forcing those Thunderers out of position, doing some damage to them. They're now going to rout away, of course, but with the Chameleons here and more Feral Cold Ones lurking, should be able to outrun those Dragonback Slayers no problem. Get back in the battle. These Feral Cold Ones also here, ransacking the cannon, getting on those blasting charges, so the defensive geometry of the Dowie slowly being picked apart and broken here by the Lizardmen, but the question is, can they actually, do enough damage to break through and get past the Dwarfs' defenses? Definitely is going to be close. Right now, the Dwarfs are holding out quite well. They've managed to protect most of their Thunderers so far, although finally the Lizards are starting to break through in significant force. Nice Rune of Wrath and Ruin there, blasting some of those Red Crests, but they're going to persevere, continue to pursue, use that poison and high speed to make sure the Thunderers can't get away there. Yeah, looks like they're trying their best blocking with these Slayers here. We do get some Feral Cold Ones coming back over here. Red Crest, Feral Cold Ones over here as well. Kroq did manage to get in there with the Hand of the Gods, and get a few kills in value. Nothing too crazy, but he's just hanging back for the time being. Definitely smart, not wanting to risk taking too much damage from the Slayers or the Thunderers. He doesn't really have a clear avenue to try and attack Thorek with Kroq yet, so might as well just keep him in reserves for the time being, not risk him while the infantry continues to grind. The Saurus did a great job in this front line, managing to mostly beat down the Dwarf Warriors with about half HP, pretty much across the board, other than the ones that got matched up against, you know, multiple targets. But another Man's Core Summon going to be pulled up here, looking to potentially go after those Thunderers. They all get set to fire into different targets. Haven't really had any great targets to focus on, but just the fact that they're even shooting at all here, managed to mow down that unit of Feral Cold Ones very effectively. But the Chameleons are still lurking in the back, still taking that Thunder fire to the teeth, which is, again, it's much better that for the Lizards at least to be taking the gunfire on the Chameleons than something else like Kroq, who has now chosen to move in. Rune of Doom has been popped a little bit late. Would have liked to have seen that a little bit earlier when the front lines were making their first clash, but still, it's going to help the Dwarf Warriors that are alive continue to trade out here. Dragonback Slayers, though, matched up on Saurus, is going to be pretty inefficient for them. Nice Flocks of Doom going to be thrown around as well, since the two Man's Core summons have been burned. Here comes Kroq, or there goes Kroq, rather, charging on after Thorek. Now that Thorek's been isolated somewhat, it doesn't have nearly the same support structure anymore. Kroq can move in at a lot lower risk and try and deal with him. Thorek's definitely not a pushover, though. Decent stats and his own pretty good armor-piercing damage means that he's not going to go quietly into that good night. We'll have to keep this battle in the background here. Deadly Onslaught, of course, will put Kroq up to 136 charge bonus. Wow. 550 weapon strength momentarily. So that charge bonus definitely helps. You can see that the initial battle did go heavily in favor of Kroq here, but now some Slayers are moving in. We've got Red Crests on the other side, so both Lords getting some support there. We'll kind of keep that in the background as the Saurus continue to roll up various Dwarven troops here, getting onto the Thunderers finally. The Chameleons moving into melee, or maybe they got surrounded somehow, I don't know. They are going to be poisoning, though, as they do fight in melee. It looks like, yeah, maybe they actually are pursuing those Thunderers on purpose, trying to keep them disrupted so they can't fire in to Kroq, which you can see there with the Dragonbacks moving in, his own Red Crest support are running for the hills. He's started to take a lot of damage in that engagement against Thorek. Things evened out significantly, so he's wisely going to use his mobility to pull away there and just allow these Saurus to keep grinding through. And the Chameleon Skinks are now being used to chase the routing Thunderers off, which is just a fantastic use for them. High speed and their poison, again, in melee and with their ranged attacks both, allows them to chase off Dwarven infantry no problem. So I'd love to see that. Love to see Red Crest doing it as well. Just the differential in speed is super important in this matchup with Skink units specifically. Another Hand of the Gods going to go off. It counts as a magic and missile attack, so it is subject to both of these resistances. 55% of that damage would have been mitigated there, but even still, did a pretty solid amount of damage. Just goes to show how powerful Hand of the Gods can be if it gets good contact. A little Flock of Doom there as well to damage these Dragonback Slayers. Does the Rune Lord, does the Mount, I should say, actually increase magic resistance? Yes, it does. So that Flock of Doom is going to be definitely nerfed, more than a third of its damage, but it's still pretty effective. I've been seeing a lot of people using Flock of Doom recently. Had Rider Rohan used it against me a little bit as well, and it seems very good overall for the cost. So I do like to see that here, even with the Dwarven spell resistance. You know, that little chip damage over time definitely helps. But oh, looks like he canceled that Rune of Wrath and Ruin. Not exactly sure what happened there, but the two Chameleons using up the last of their ammunition here. Clever Girls moving in to wrap up the last of the Thunderers. Feral Cold One's so cost-effective in this matchup. When used effectively, Rune of Doom can save those Thunderers, but Slayers, of course, still going to hold out, and it pretty much comes down to just Thorek himself, which Thorek is a unit, must be said. Going to throw, or I guess there's still a few Dwarf Warriors and Slayers hanging around here. Another Rune of Wrath and Ruin there. Try and deal with the Feral Cold Ones. They don't have the best leadership, these Feral Lizards, so it is going to come down to, again, another Lord duel between these two with their runic glowing items. Absolutely fantastic. We do have some more Saurus and Chameleons moving in as well. Cold-blooded, gonna try and keep those Feral Cold ones in the fight here, but Kroq gets locally surrounded despite having support units nearby. He's taking a lot of hits from the Slayers in the back here and from Thorek as well, so suddenly things look super dangerous for Lizardmen. If Kroq goes down here, if he gets killed, then the Lizardmen likely just chain route, especially their skink units, but looks like he's going to be able to squeeze through his own Saurus there, kind of leave the skink priest to do his dirty work. Try and let these Feral Cold ones with their Cold-Blooded and the Saurus work through the last of the Slayers here. Got 6 Slayers left, 30 Dwarf Warriors, all just getting circle beaten by Lizards. Kroq's looking like he wants another Cycle Charge, but perhaps decides against it for the time being. Makes sense, just let the Chameleons, let your other support units do their work, although they're struggling to actually finish off these Dwarf units here. These 3 Slayers with 69 HP, very nice. Dwarf Warriors a little under 1,000, but they managed to rout the Feral Cold ones and the Saurus Warriors, so it comes down to just the Chameleons. And of course, Skink Priest also comes back here. It's going to throw another Flock of Doom shortly. Let's watch the Chameleons whip out their little cudgels and try and move in to finish it in melee. Their poison, of course, benefits them greatly in this situation. And they do manage to finish the Slayers and rout the Dwarf Warriors, so suddenly Thorek is looking all lonesome and exposed. We'll fast forward a little bit here as Logic kind of uses up his final resources, making sure he chases those routing units off as much as possible, leave a little Flock of Doom just for an extra, like, whatever, 20, 30 HP damage that it does to Thorek. Finally, we're going to get the last engagement with all the clever girls. All the Chameleons as well, of course, providing that sweet poison. Thorek responds with a Rune of Wrath and Ruin, but Kroq wheeling up and around the sides, coming for the rear charge. Spear to the face. Thorek responds, but it's going to be too much for the poor Dwarf Lord, who gets routed by Kroq, just barely. Super close finish there. So big thanks to Logic for sending that one in. That was definitely awesome. Brought a smile to my face. Very well played to both players, honestly. It was absolutely down to the wire. You know, different RNG or different decisions definitely could have changed the outcome of the battle, but at the end of the day, just gotta evaluate it as it is. The Saurus actually performed quite well, all things considered. I don't always love Saurus in this matchup, but this particular build, they actually did quite well. They almost... one of them actually does pay for themselves. The other ones get pretty close, which is good to see for a kind of sword and shield infantry. They don't always tend to pay for themselves, especially against the Dwarfs. Armor-piercing mobile units, the Clever Girls, and the Red Crest don't get as much value as I thought they did. Maybe tactically they fulfilled their role, but a lot of value actually came from the Chameleons, which doesn't surprise me terribly. Most expensive kind of infantry units for the Dwarfs here are these Slayers who have no armor and are quite vulnerable to the Chameleons. So I really like that play there. And then, of course, Kroq himself carrying some nice value. Thorek responding well. Blasting charges were pretty well limited. None of them really got too much value. Same with the Thunderers. They were fairly well limited as well, besides this one. Slayers, of course, very strong in this matchup. Arguably should take 4. And, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, again, you can't always 100% predict the builds, but I would have liked to have seen maybe one Thunderer traded out for some iron... What are they? The Iron Drakes or the Trollhammer Torpedoes. Yeah, for the anti-large AP. Just insanely high burst damage up close. One volley will pretty much rout a unit of Feral Cold ones from them, so would have been a little bit easier to manage these, I think. And although they're not necessarily great against the Saurus, they can be used against them in a pinch, and certainly would be able to blast Kroq. They were able to get a good volley on him. I like to have at least one unit in this matchup for insurance, even if it wouldn't necessarily been ideally suited for this build. I do think it would have been helpful to help manage these Feral Cold ones, but regardless, definitely a fun one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching it. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.